Hey, everybody. You're about to hear a synopsis of the movie The Messenger. Enjoy watching. While serving in Iraq, Will Montgomery suffered injuries to his eye and leg. A girl met him outside the hospital with flowers. They slept together and then went to dinner at a restaurant. And there, during the conversation, we realized that while Will was at war, Kelly was engaged to another man. Will is grateful that Kelly met him and jokingly asked him to say hello to the fiancé Alan, and although the whole evening the guy was ironic, he is very offended that everything turned out this way. Sergeant Montgomery is summoned by Colonel Dorsett. He has a new assignment and the opportunity to fulfill the most honorable duty to the country. He is sent to the detachment by a casualty report. He is brought up to date by Captain Stone. This job requires a strong character. Some guys start stuttering and confusing names, sometimes even crying. It's important to be clear. No, we're lost or gone. One grandmother so decided that her grandson went over to the enemy side and became a traitor. Only killed or dead. They only come to the next of kin, no friends or mistresses. You can't touch relatives unless you need medical attention. So no hugging. It's also important to notify loved ones within the first 24 hours of identity confirmation. Ideally within the first 4 hours, they need to hear about the loss from them, not the morning news. That's why Montgomery should always have his pager with him. During the night the first message arrived on it, putting on his dark glasses, Will began to study the manual. Stone continues to teach the sergeant to never park near the house before the relatives have time to realize something. The call is short, but a knock is better. Considering some have guns, no good morning, what a good morning it is. Now they want Mrs. Burrell, but the dead man's girlfriend answered the door. They won't talk to her, even though Monica is pregnant. The young couple were about to be married. After waiting 30 seconds, Will and Stone left. Monica didn't realize what was going on until the end and then burst into loud tears. Stone approached the soldier's mother and told her that her son had blown up on a landmine and was immediately slapped in the face. Both women screamed and cried. Will is in a stupor. After his first day on the job, he decides to have a drink. Stone admits that he is a former alcoholic, also reasoning that when the children go to war they are told to be prepared for anything, but they never listen. They hang flags and applaud, and then bullets fly. Soldiers die, and it's such a shock to them. To get people used to it, all funerals should be televised. Will told Kelly, who he'd been with since he was a kid, but when he was sent off to war, he just told her she was free. So that Stone wouldn't come knocking on her door one day. At home, Will is always sitting in semi-darkness and doing stuff. Waiting for the next message, but this time Stone called, out of nothing to do. He has a hard time sleeping at night, especially after notifying his relatives. During their conversation, a work-related message came in. It was time for them to move out. Stone had to kick the girl out of the house in the middle of the night. Tonight says Will wanted to. If anything, they're going to the man, he might as well hit. There's dog barking coming from the house. Knocking twice and calling the officers were about to leave, but then Dale Martin came out from behind the house. Will immediately began to make a prepared speech. Dale's son was killed yesterday by a sniper's shot. Death was instantaneous. The man pointed to the tree he had planted the year his son was born. Dale spat in the sergeant's face and asked why he wasn't there now, and it wasn't him but his son who died. Stone said they had to go, but Dale chased after them and called Will names. He almost had an answer, but Stone held him back. The grief-stricken man was left alone in the car. Will immediately put on his dark glasses, the injury to his eye bothering him more than the injury to his leg. The car with the officers was stopped by a policeman. Supposedly they had run a red light half a kilometer ago. Will explains that they are in a hurry with an important mission, but the cop doesn't stop. Then the guy suggests he break Olivia Peterson's heart himself. Better yet, she'll find out her husband was blown to bits on the local news. Will proves to be extremely persuasive and the cops back off. As the officers put on their berets, the people on the playground quieted down. The worst part of their mission on Christmas Day. They caught Mrs. Peterson in the yard. She immediately asked how it happened. The woman shook hands with the military, apologized for not inviting them into the house. Will suddenly offered to tell her son about the tragedy, but Olivia refused. She thanked the men. The widow realizes what a hard job it is. Will froze in place. "It's the first time I've ever seen that," Stone says. "She's definitely sleeping with someone. She just washed a man's shirt." That evening, Will is in the car outside Olivia's house. She doesn't have a lover. He has no particular desire to hang out with a co-worker at the bar tonight, but Stone convinces him to stay. Willa reveals that his father is dead and his mother has lost her mind. Stone shares that he joined the army on a dare and stayed. He's sure the sergeant isn't going anywhere either, even though he only has 3 months left to serve. Will continues to follow the widow. She yelled at the recruiters who were brainwashing the kids at the mall. Will offered to help the woman, and after being rebuffed, he then picked her up with her son at a bus stop. The guy justifies that he was at the mall by accident. Will didn't go home right away. He went to repair Olivia's car. She says that it would be nice to buy a new one, somehow wrong to do it on payment for her husband. A new message catches Will at the gym. Stone suspects his partner's trying to get the girl into bed. She's got no conscience. She'll go crazy if she does. A man opens up to the officers and claims there's no Mrs. Galindo living here. But it turns out his daughter got married in secret from her father. Stone interrupted the family scene and informed the girl that her husband had blown himself up with an improvised explosive device. She screamed and clung to her comforting father's shoulder. Will is drinking at the bar again. There was just celebrating the return of a local kid from the army. He was telling the company about a redneck soldier. The story was funny, everyone was having fun, but it ended with the soldier being riddled with bullets. The boy did not immediately understand why everyone suddenly became sad. Only Will understands how he feels. He returns from the war as if from another planet. Stone is a master of shooting girls, telling them about his exploits on the battlefield. Olivia's husband's military funeral is taking place. Will watches her from the sidelines. The woman notices it. Next time, the officers had to bring an interpreter with them because Mr. Vasquez doesn't speak English. A man is told his daughter died in a helicopter crash. There's a small child playing on the floor. Mr. Vasquez bursts into tears. Will is holding back his emotions as best he can. Kelly leaves him a message on his phone and apologizes for the wedding invitation. She asks him not to come. She and Alan had a huge fight over it. Will falls asleep on the floor and arrives at Olivia's the next day and presents the kid with his unit's flag. Will offers his help again, but Olivia is going to move somewhere else. She's used to constantly moving because of her husband. For the first time, the woman made a return move and invited the guy to stay for pizza, but the conversation didn't go particularly well. Olivia suggested Will pick up some of her husband's stuff from the warehouse. She wasn't going to pull it all with her anyway. The guy wants to kiss the woman, but she replies that if they are seen, he'll be called a lowlife who took advantage of grief, and she's just a whore. Will tells how he lost his father when he was 10 years old. He crashed while driving drunk. They definitely won't be seen at Olivia's house, so they went there, but the woman has a hard time deciding to even have a first kiss. She first wanted to leave for the shower, then tearfully offered coffee. Eventually Olivia said she couldn't. The woman talks about her husband. He couldn't be at home anymore. She, on the other hand, was glad when he left. That said, she missed him, but only because of the guy he was years ago. The other day Olivia found his old shirt and it reeked of rage and fear. The man he had become was there. He started hurting her and her son. That man was dead, but Olivia still wanted to wash the shirt. She shouldn't have invited Will. She thinks she loves her husband even more now than she did before. As Olivia left, the boy asked to stay at her house a little longer. He's comfortable here. When a soldier dies on a covert mission, the army calls it an accident to justify the next death. Another soldier dies falling into a ditch. They call it a battlefield death to give it some meaning. An elderly couple, bereft of their son, were shopping in a store. Hearing the right name, Will delivers the terrible news right there. The man vomited and the sergeant hugged the inconsolable parents and helped them up. Stone came down hard on the rookie for violating protocol and touching the relatives. Will took offense to the captain and refused to get in the car. He returned home late that night on foot. Stone suggests that he needs a vacation. They agree that they will take a vacation together with the girls. One of them just happens to have an empty cabin in the woods while Stone and his girlfriend yell and moan all over the house. Will and his date modestly wait out their coitus outside. All weekend long, the partners stay dry. Stone reproaches Will for taking things too personally. They passed by young people on jet skis and Splashed Stone swore at them. The guys were offended, so they came to confront him. The guys didn't talk long and now they're on their way back to town with bruises. Dirty, wrinkled, and completely drunk, they piled into Kelly's wedding. The men met Alan. Stone took the bearded man out for a drink and left the former couple alone. The girl does not understand what this is all about. Getting drunk during the banquet, Will decided to raise a toast, but Alan interrupted him and raised a toast to the military. Will congratulated the young in the style of handing over a funeral, sang a dirty song with Stone, and shouted from the heart. Afterward, the partners started playing war games. In the parking lot, Will fell asleep in the car, and Stone generally passed out right on the ground in the woods. The sergeant advises him to finally retire, but the colonel is unlikely to let him go. He saved his life by not giving him a drink. He's property of the army. Also, the captain admits that he lied about his baptism of fire. He did not see war. Dale Martin was waiting outside Montgomery's house. He says that the last words he heard from his son were to see him next week. Dale sincerely apologizes and shakes Will's hand. At home, Willa tells a friend how he was wounded during a city battle, how homemade bombs exploded in front of him, how half of a soldier's face fell off, how he saved 2 boys who were still very green, and how he saw Derek lying in the street being shot at. Will tore toward him and pulled him aside. His leg remained in another neighborhood. Will shoved the wounded man under the car, and suddenly a bomb that was lying there exploded under Derek. Will was covered in the meat of his comrade. The sergeant woke up in the hospital, where he was called a hero for the first time. But what a hero he was, because he was the one who put the soldier on the bomb. When his eye was patched up, Will climbed to the roof of the hospital in the middle of the night and stood on its edge. But that's where he calmed down. "Why didn't you jump?" Stone asked. Stone had run out of alcohol, now only Pepsi. Unexpectedly, he cried bitterly. Olivia had already packed everything. Will drove up to her house and asked which state she and her son were moving to. The sergeant throws the last boxes into the car. He wants to take the last chance and asks for their exact address. He'll be sure to visit them. Olivia doesn't know yet and suggests he go inside. Will writes his address and Olivia is sure to send him a letter. A new dawn is coming for both of them.